my homework.
Well, it's a shame because you are now live and were live when you were when you were admitting to not having done your homework. Uh, Candy and Priscilla, thank you so much for joining me on tonight's edition of Tete a Tete, which is going to be very special because we are going to be looking at whether PAO, people of African origin, are publicly silent over the future of the new world following the COVID pandemic. And here's a way of an introduction. The UK is on what many fear is but a temporary experimental injection-led release from COVID restrictions. Since May 29th, there have been 3 major demonstrations in London, each bigger than the prior event, culminating in a massive demonstration in Trafalgar Square on the 24th of July. It was attended by leading figures in the freedom movement, pushing back against further lockdowns and COVID restrictions. Now, none of the demonstrations received any but the scantest mention in mainstream media, as a concerted effort was made to erase them from public awareness. With injection rates standing at 86.5 million doses given, 59.2% of the population are double dose injected, with relentless pressure via all media to raise these numbers. There are plans now to vaccinate school children starting in September, and a round of booster shots in store for so-called new variants of the virus. Furthermore, despite earlier promises not to mandate the experimental biological agent, de facto mandating of the experimental treatment is being levied upon the UK population as proof of injection is likely to become a requirement for some workplaces and hospitality venues. Resistance to government policy on COVID has centered on dissenters wanting to discard masks, outlaw mandatory injection, and exclude children from the targets for injection. Throughout all of this, PAO voices here seem muted, with very few public freedom advocates to be heard from their communities. In the same period, however, a march for colonial and slavery reparations has taken place in London, along the lines of the COVID freedom demonstrations. So PAO can be motivated to speak up if they want to. Today, I'm asking my panel, are PAO, people of African origin, publicly silent over the management of the COVID pandemic? Or is this a false impression? And if so, how can their voices be better heard? My guests are broadcaster Candy Kisei, broadcaster and journalist Priscilla Nwippo, and it was going to be a special thrill to have with us Kwame Mfojua, a legal expert from Ghana. However, Kwame is sadly not able to join us now. So, the icebreaker. I must ask you, ladies, how have you found the weather in the past few days? Hasn't it been extraordinary?
Do you know what? Somebody says the weather has bipolar, and I have to agree with them.
And why are they saying that? It's because it's been, doing the twists and turns all the time, huh?
Well, it's all the crazy, 1 minute you think the sun is out, yeah, and the next minute it's raining. I've been wanting my garden sorted out for a couple of weeks now. And, every day you think, yes, I have time today, we can do the garden. It rains. And then when you think, okay.
And when it rains, it's not gentle either. I mean, it's like rainy season West African rain. Yeah, monsoon rain.
It's a bit, yeah, it has bipolar.
It's yeah. So the weather has mental health issues. What's your take, Candy?
Same. I have the same problem. My garden, my beautiful garden, is so unkempt at the moment. I have a gentleman, and every time he says I'll come tomorrow, it rains in the morning. And because it's raining in the morning, the grass is wet, no work can be done. Right. And it really upsets me because
I'm not alone with this issue then. It's good to know I'm not alone.
You're not alone.
So not only do we have a health crisis going on, we obviously have the makings of an environmental crisis as well. But to come to the subject of tonight's conversation, Candy and Priscilla, is it true that PAO are silent in the UK over COVID restrictions, or is that just a false impression that I'm getting? Who goes first? Candy?
Well, you see, anything I say, you may think it's an excuse, but it's not. Are the PAOs being listened to in the first place? Do they think they have an audience? Because if they had an audience, they would say something. But they're struggling with everything. Everything needs to be kind of fought for before it's listened to, and it ends up in marches, etc., etc. And even when we're having the marches, still you feel that you wonder whether it had any impact. Now, one of the things that concerns me is if you go into a meeting where you say something and then your white counterpart answers, says what she means is, how are you going to speak? How are you going to speak? We get this all the time. It's happening all the time. So these are issues which need to be addressed. Now, when you ask the question of regarding the vaccine or regarding the COVID, blah, 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 how many people are up there with the planets? How many people are up there with the policymakers? How many people are talking? We had this COVID-19 since last year, March, and it was last month that NHS medical report came out saying that they noticed that I've got one here actually, so that I am specific in what I'm saying. They came out saying that the pulse oximeter, which tests people, takes the wrong pulse of people of color.
How on earth can that be?
Well, it is in the papers. It's everywhere. People can Google it. This is not something private or personal to me. It is out there. Now, if that is the case, where are we going with this? Now, this was not a report made by a Black person saying, I went into the hospital and they tested my pulse and the reading is, I think it's wrong. No, this is the NHS coming to tell us this now.
Public Health England is putting that out.
The pulse oximeter, where is the camera so that you get it right?
Yeah, right.
It's something that is vital. We're told to have it in our houses, and you cannot breathe when you do this or that. You bring it out. Now, what's going on? Why?
Okay, so what? And coming back to the answer to my question, you're saying that when Black people speak up, nobody listens, and so the conclusion I'm taking from your response is that PAO are not very vocal. Am I right, or putting words in your mouth, Candy?
Well, yeah, they're not so vocal. They're not as vocal as they should be.
Okay, terrific. I'm going to come to you now, Priscilla. What's your answer to that question? Am I making this up? Is it my impression that people of African origin aren't particularly vocal in public spaces? We'll come to private spaces later. In public spaces, is that impression?
Naturally, when you look across the public spectrum, it's very glaring that indeed we're not hearing from them. But I don't think it's the case that they're not vocal in the public spaces. I think it's the case that the platform or the opportunity is not available. I think that, if this whole COVID and vaccine situation was permitted a conversation of both sides, a conversation of views, a conversation of thoughts, then I think we will certainly hear from people of African origin. At the moment, we're not hearing from them because as it stands, the government structure does not permit free conversation about the situation.
But it doesn't stop lots of people of European origin and Asians being up on all these platforms and having their say.
Because the opportunity is given to them. And what we're also having is that, we don't also have that platform that of our own creation that is, again, discussing in depth this, the whole vaccine
So
taking.
that's a question of media. We don't have PAO Media dedicated to ourselves. Who put this matter on the agenda?
Well, they exist.
Mm-hmm.
PAO Media exists,
Mm-hmm.
but they are not putting this matter on the agenda. They're not, they're not creating programs or opportunities themselves equally, in equal measure. Just as, you can say the other platforms are not creating the opportunity for for PAOs to share their views.
Mm-hmm.
Equally, the media dedicated to them are doing exactly the same thing. So, they're not being heard. It's not because they don't want to speak or that their view is not there. I think it's primarily because the platform is not there for them to do so. But
So
I think,
PAO are being shut out of the conversation. Okay, if they're being shut out of the conversation, Candy, Priscilla, in public spaces, what's the situation in our private communities, in our own spaces? Can you look on Facebook? There are lots and lots of platforms dedicated to people of African origin, Caribbean, African Caribbeans, for us in the diaspora to have our say. Do you see that this conversation is happening within those platforms, which we effectively own on social media? Candy?
Well, yes, there are. Priscilla and I have, we work for radio stations, which
Mm-hmm.
is PAO
Mm-hmm.
covered, and we work for other radio stations. We go on interviews, etc. So this is not a new thing. The problem, though, is it is just for a particular. It's not mainstream now. Where the issue is more mainstream, for example, there is an Asian radio station, and that
Mm-hmm.
radio station has been going for a long time. It does
Mm-hmm.
falter a little bit. It has
Mm-hmm.
financial issues a little bit, but it's still there. It is
Mm-hmm.
being backed by very powerful, financially endowed Asians who keep it going. The
Mm-hmm.
problem with us, um, from the diaspora, is that we do not have that much clout to have a huge audience on the issues that we want to talk about. And
Mm-hmm.
so, where if you talk about private, yes, I mean, people go on all these discussions. I mean, I was on Clubhouse yesterday and this was being talked about. So, but where you will have big discussions on the level of where all, let's say, people of African origin would think, oh, this is the range, let me see what's going on there. We haven't got it. We just haven't got it. And because we haven't got it, um, it's all very patchy. But there are other issues, but we'll come to that. But
Yeah.
it's
Okay. All
patchy.
right. Okay. So you're saying that even within our communities, the platforms that we have are not really focusing on this issue because we don't have some kind of critical mass. Is that your sense of the thing, Priscilla?
I don't think it's because we don't have the critical mass. We do have the critical mass.
Right.
I think what is lacking is that it's the vision. Candy made mention of the fact that the Asian radio station is being supported and kept afloat
Mm-hmm.
by rich Asians who can afford to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in our space, let's just take, for instance, as Candy has said,
Mm-hmm.
we both once upon a time appeared on a program that
Mm-hmm.
was discussing issues pertaining to Africa. And we
Mm-hmm.
did that on a regular basis, weekly.
Mm-hmm.
It was subsequently taken off air. Why? Finances.
Mm-hmm.
And what we don't do is to have that vision to create that program and
Mm-hmm.
stay with it.
Mm-hmm.
So important that we stay with it. That is that consistent program that when we go there, we know we're going to hear about the current information of what is happening, either here in the UK or out there in any part of Africa. So, for instance, you and I, Satet, you know, we worked with you know, another media house. Again, there we started. There were programs that were started. We're doing reasonable. Why were they withdrawn? Why was it, you know, taking off there? Finances was said to be the issue. But what I find with these you know, media organizations is that they come in, they pour money. They're very, very, they want to pour money into entertainment because they believe that entertainment is the way to go. But they forget that there is a huge population, young, middle-aged, and old, whatever you want to call them, who are really thirsting for very good, you know, current affairs, cultural issues that are being discussed on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. They will tune in if they believe that, you know, they are being fed the right information or that they are being educated in the process. And that's what we lack.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's this kind of stereotype that Black people only do music, kind of thing. And
it's beyond annoying.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, but we're only here to come and dance. And it is interesting that the most successful programs in the UK for Black people tend towards music and entertainment. Well, I'm going to come to the next question. Is it that the stereotype of the opinion forming, thoughtful PAO doesn't exist? The stereotype of that the idea that here is a person of African origin who is deep thinking, who is perspicacious, who is aware of themselves, conscious of what they want to do, that the wider world doesn't recognize that such a creature actually exists here in Europe, can they?
The wider world knows that these kind of people exist, without a doubt. There are Black people making waves all over the place. The point is that they will not give that Black person audience. They may use that Black person. They may put that Black person in a position where they can do whatever it is they are expecting of them, if it is going to benefit the country, the group, the crowd, whatever it is. But to actually expose that person to get the same sort of accolades that the white counterpart will get, it's not going to happen. It doesn't happen. And when it does, it's like a tokenism thing where it doesn't really taste very well in your mouth, but okay, I'll go. The number of people who are doing things in the background who are of what do you call it, PAO, you will be staggered when you find out about them. But they are all in the background. They're not in the forefront. Nobody knows who's doing what, but we see them on the train.
Okay, so I mean, the narrative that we're putting forward now looks very much as if somebody has to give us the opportunity. The talent is there, the ability is there, but somebody isn't giving us the opportunity. But isn't it our responsibility to create and sustain those opportunities, Priscilla?
Absolutely. It's not up to anybody, because it matters not where you go. They have their own
agenda,
narrative. You know, they have their own ideals. They have a way that they want to go. So we can't be expecting that they're suddenly going to bring us on board and give to us what it is that we want. So I think it's very important for us to be able to create that platform, and we're yet to do so, but we really ought to get on with it. You know, for me, because as I say it, I'm speaking to myself. For me, over the years, I have tried in whatever space I found myself to ensure that whatever I put out was, you know, it was right. The information was right.
Can I share something? Can I share something with you, Priscilla? I don't know if I've told you before. This might embarrass you. The first day I saw you in the studio, was in a program called Journalists Hangout.
That's right.
And I went round into the makeup room next door, looked in, I had to dab my forehead because I was coming on after the break.
Yeah.
And I had to wipe, literally my eyes teared up because I'd watched you in the first segment and I thought, blimey, where did they find her? So many thoughts went through my mind. Number one, why don't I know her? Because I've been in the media space for 20 years. Why don't we know each other?
Yeah.
First. Secondly, where have you been hiding all of this time? And I thought to myself, woohoo, you know, we won at last. This particular media environment was providing me with the kind of people that I've always looked forward to working with. But something went wrong. And it certainly wasn't your fault. It certainly wasn't.
No. Something went wrong because the focus shifted.
Yes.
The focus shifted. It sort of, sadly, that shifting of the focus just sort of took away from, because I that particular media environment I thought was a great opportunity.
Fantastic
To be able
absolutely
to
the best.
develop and to establish what we're speaking of, but
Right.
sadly it wasn't to be.
Right.
And I do think if that had continued, it would still be around today.
Yes,
Because it's about engaging with.
Well,
the
it still
audience.
is, but it kind of in a
Yeah,
rather old
you
way.
know what I mean.
Yes,
Yeah,
no,
it
absolutely.
would still, yeah.
Can I put another question to you? And I'm coming to you next, please, Candy. Is that what's the problem that you were too good to be kind of appreciated? Was that can I tell you, because again, this is my impression. My impression was that you just didn't fit somebody's stereotype of what a black person should be, a black woman should be.
That is so kind. Thank you. That's so generous. Let me be honest and say this. I can't answer that question. I don't know what the issues were. But I would, but if I was to comment on it, I would like to think it's about focus. I think, what I have learned being in this media space as a woman of African origin, and understanding the various platforms that have come over the years to represent us, I've come to understand that everybody, like I've said earlier, the focus is on something else. They believe that if they focus in that area, and don't forget, it's not easy for them to function in the media space, because the structure is such that they're quite literally snuffed out financially. They're not able to make the money on equal footing, to their white counterparts, for instance. So much more is required of them. They're paying so much. And as you and I know, it's a very, very expensive environment.
Oh, totally.
Very expensive to run. So
Infrastructure
all of that exists.
Yeah.
But I think that the lack of focus of, being able to carry the community along on the channel. So what do I mean by that? I mean, having programs, understanding that, yes, there are housewives within this community of people of African origin. There are businessmen within this community of people of African origin. There are young people. There are young men and women who have great careers and inspiring, to do even better. So it's understanding the demographic and understanding that we need to cater for the wide demographic, and doing that. And the problem there is we're not taking all of that into consideration. We're just sort of tunnel visioned into thinking we need to do entertainment. Yeah, we all like
music,
but not all the time. We want to be able to switch and listen to Candy, give us her views and opinions on something. We want to hear from you, Satet, presenting a great program on, something that's happening, whether it's across the African continent or in the Americas or wherever. Do you know what I mean? There are people that would want to listen to me, whether we're all discussing current affairs in our own respective ways, with our own respective personalities and touch and, know-how. There are audiences for that, but these channels are not recognizing that. And so they tend to come and poof, they disappear very quickly because they're not carrying the community along
with them. Okay, Candy, Priscilla is making this point about focus and the fact that the media operations tend to be quite tunnel visioned into the area of maybe entertainment, particularly music. Is focus the problem for you as to giving ourselves a platform to be able to air our point of view such that people pay attention? Is it a question of focus?
Focus is, I don't think focus really is a problem. It is how you maintain, how do you, I mean, the majority of us, a lot of the PAOs, as you call us, the ones in the media, who is paying you? Who is helping you to get to where you want to be? Priscilla and I were working because it was early morning. I would get up in the morning at 4 a.m. to get to the studio for 6 o'clock, to get to, sometimes we're combing our hair there. We're getting, it was crazy. And I did it 2 days a week. I don't know how many days Priscilla did it, but we kind of, overlapped and interlapped and all of that. And how much were they paying us? If just to get even, what do you call it? An allowance, maybe your journey or whatever. Up till now, some taxis that I've taken, I haven't been paid for it. I have sent the invoices like 3-4 times. I haven't been paid for it. Now, how much can you take? How much can you do? Because apart from that, we have our own jobs that we had to rush to after the interview. And I'm telling you, I did this every week.
Yeah.
Every week for a long time.
Because you can't, you won't let down the program.
No.
But the program might let you down.
Oh, the program always lets you down. But the point is that you are doing this because you're thinking of the people that you're sending these messages to. You have a responsibility to the people. And it's because, this is not a celeb thing or anything. It was news, it was current affairs, it was, culture, etc., etc. So it's not as if we're doing some grunting and then going and standing on a red carpet. It's just work. But even so, it was just crazy. And they didn't take into account all the things that we had to give up, all the sacrifices we had to make, and all of that just to get to work, to do this for them. And it was, I can't even describe it if it was work or us wasting our time. It was crazy.
Sure. You know what, Ted? I think we need to do a program, and I'm sorry to interrupt you on this. I think we need to do a program discussing, the people of African origin media space and their lack of investment and their lack of willingness to pay. Because we see a lot of our stars today working for the BBC, working for ITV and whatnot. They've got bills to pay.
Absolutely. And the reason they're there is because they can then pay the bills.
Yeah, we're lacking that in this space because people are not prepared to just pay you basics. Okay.
Don't start crying on this show.
No, before I get sued for under the Trades Descriptions Act, this was a program about COVID policy. However, you can see that there is a straight line between people's muteness, people's raised voices or not, and the economics within the community. Now, I'm going to show you a clip of something that took place. Just a moment, let's see if we can find this. This is a program that took place in South Africa, with South Africans pushing back against the possibility of mandatory vaccinations. Let's see what happens.
Advocate. If the teachers in our country find themselves in a corner, being pressed, being pushed at all costs to take this experimental injection, what must they do?
So it's important for them to equip themselves with the knowledge of the Constitution. Section 12(3) of the Constitution very clearly says that everyone has the right to bodily and psychological integrity. And this right includes not, I emphasize, not to be subjected to medical or scientific experiments without their consent. We are in a situation where a global experiment is going on in the name of COVID-19 vaccination. So our teachers have to know that you have a right to say no on the basis that the Constitution says you should not be experimented upon. It's up to you to decide. Look, the most important thing, Pastor John, is that for those who decide, I have enough information and I want to go through with this, we are not saying they should stop. It's their right as well to go through with it. But there's also the right of those who do not want their bodies to be used for experimentation to say no.
Well, there you are. You can see that South Africa is pretty much coming to the stage where the United Kingdom is coming up for. There are some people who may have to get jabbed to keep their jobs. And even though nobody has passed a law in Parliament to say that vaccination or the experimental biological agent is mandatory, your life can be so manipulated that without taking the injection, your life can't continue. So it's a de facto kind of mandation of the injection. Now, what struck me about that piece was the fact that you had a community leader speaking with a legal expert, passing the information over. I can't imagine that taking place here in the United Kingdom. Candy, can you?
Well, it's going to be a battle if your boss says you need to take. It's happening now.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the situation where publicly somebody is counseling and advocating for those who want freedom over their bodies. It's not the issue of, that issue everybody understands. The issue is, can you picture a situation in which people of African origin are able to sit in a public place and give straightforward advice like that on plein air, in plain sight, to their communities?
No, I don't see.
And why not? Why not?
Because I don't even see a person of African origin in Europe asking this question in plain air for someone to answer it. It's not going to happen.
Okay.
If the question is not going to be asked, so there's no need for someone to come and answer it.
Okay.
These people,
Priscilla? Yeah. Sorry, carry on. I interrupted. Candy,
no,
go ahead.
I was going to say that the situation is that people are, when you're persecuted and you feel persecuted, there's certain lines you don't cross. And this is what it is. At this moment, from my angle, this is how I see it. There are people who you will ask them a question and they look at you like, are you mad? This is not something that we talk about. Do you understand? So
yeah, have you lost your wits? I mean, haven't you got the common sense to be asking about things like this in the public place?
Why are you asking? This is, I can't go to my boss and say, no, I can't. What more come on air and be seen to be asking Such an amazing question. No, it's not going to happen. I don't know what Priscilla thinks, but this is what I think.
Priscilla, can you comment? Because you've recently come back from West Africa, haven't you? And what's the situation there in terms of public sentiment and how it's expressed about the kind of health protocols that are being used to manage COVID?
I thought it was so interesting. And one of the words I used to describe it was civil. So for one thing, everybody is sort of going about their business and, getting on with life. When you get to maybe government buildings or you get to the airport.
Which country are we talking now?
This is Nigeria.
Okay. Yeah.
So you then, it's when you get there that, you must wear your mask. But this is what is interesting. You get on an internal flight, say from Abuja to Lagos or Lagos, Abuja, wherever to Port Harcourt, and this flight is full. Every seat on the plane is taken, including the jump seat. And we're all sitting next to each other as we do, squashed up in this, 15-minute flight. But then we get into the terminal at the airport and then, oh, sorry, you can't stand together. You can't stand too close to the carousel to pick up your bags because of COVID rules. You must stand apart. And, everybody should, if you're not wearing your mask, they won't let you on board. So that was my opinion.
Can I ask, on the flight, were people all masked up? Sitting cheek like out?
Everybody's sitting there with their mask on.
Yes.
I had my I always wear the visor because I'm more comfortable in that. I can't, my breathing and the mask do not agree. So I tend to wear the visor. It's much easier for me. I function better with that. And so, yes, everybody's there in their mask on this flight. And then we get into the terminal and it's, oh no, sorry, stand apart. But speaking to people on the street, just talking to individuals is quite interesting, in the sense that most ordinary people are just getting on with, how do I get by today? And they're concerning themselves with that. But where, you see the elites or the middle class, they are the ones who are more talking about taking the vaccine. Should I not? Or they've taken it and they're out there. I did have an interesting conversation, mind you, with, some of my relatives. And some of them felt that they were uncomfortable with the whole idea of taking the vaccine. And they felt that, so far for what they are familiar with, they're not sure if it's safe and they don't believe they're not going to do it. Some were quite, straight up, we're not doing this. And they should not attempt to force us to do it. But, I remember a few months ago, somebody had asked me, on a show with regards to Nigeria, when they first had their first consignment.
A show where? Here or there?
Here.
Right.
When they first had their first consignment of vaccines and it wasn't sufficient, and what my thoughts were. And I said, well, the population of Nigeria is so much that, you're talking over 150 million people. And if that is the case, and we're talking double dosing of vaccines, and you can only send maybe 4 or 5 million per time. You're never going to have enough in time for people to meet the deadline, the timing spaces in between that you're supposed to take it in order for it to be effective. That's never going to happen. But then what is interesting is what is actually happening at the moment, which is that recently, I remember seeing a headline Nigeria had received, I think it was around about the 2nd or 3rd of August, Nigeria had received like 4 million doses of Moderna vaccines. But in the last couple of days, there's been another headline, which is that these vaccines arrived with, they didn't come with the proper paperwork. And the paperwork that came with it, so for instance, there are on the WHO website, there are listed laboratories where these vaccines are made. And the particular one that was sent to Nigeria was not made in those
in the approved facility.
Yes, in the approved facility. Thank you. It wasn't made there. So Nigeria was questioning that. Okay, if it's not made there, then where are the paperwork for where was it made? And, you know, we need to know what's everything else that goes with it. And there's an issue there now. Yeah. There's a wrangling according to the report on that. And so Nigeria are now saying, well, we're not going to use it if we don't have the correct paperwork. There was a consignment that was destroyed because it was expired previously.
Excuse me?
Yes, I believe it was the AstraZeneca consignment that had been sent to Nigeria again, you know, in its millions, and it was destroyed because it had expired. I don't know if it was that.
Was it expired before it actually got there, or did it expire?
I think there was something to that effect about it. Yes.
So it was shipped out kind of outside of the use by date.
Well, maybe by the time it got there, it became used by. You know, we're having issues with ships, you know, and deliveries of things at the moment. It's all over the place. And of course, the weather, as we've mentioned it, we've seen its effect and impact around the world. So I don't know if those played a role in that. And so as a result of that, so they've been, but this is not unique to Nigeria. I understand that Ethiopia had a similar situation where they, you know, refused again to take some vaccines because they had arrived again expired. So this seems to be a regular or an occurrence that's, you know, I don't know if we can, if you can ignore it, if it's happening frequently now, then it's begging the question, what's going on, isn't it?
Absolutely. Now, Candy, there's been some dramas in Ghana lately with the Minister of Health, haven't there, about a certain consignment of, I always call it the Yuri Gagarin, injection. It's called Sputnik, isn't it? That's right, the Russian version. What happened in Ghana?
Well, the Minister of Health goes off and on his own volition, allegedly, all this is alleged, on his own volition goes off and buys, purchases, perunes, whatever, the Sputnik vaccine through middlemen. He didn't go directly to, say,
Russian suppliers,
the you know, the health and ask, but he went through middlemen who made a whole heap of money from this. Now, people, third party basically, and people found out that this is what had gone on,
and that the drugs had been marked up a huge amount.
Yes. So these drugs that were supposed to be, now Ghana is also one of the leading countries where they sent the charitable first batch of drugs. So what was he buying those Sputnik drugs for? In any way, we're not sure if the drugs did arrive in Ghana. We're not sure what the situation is with the drugs, but people found out, and there was great consternation in the land. Therefore, after a lot of fighting and screaming and gnashing of teeth, today it was announced that he was on leave.
Right.
Because people do not understand why the president has not sacked him, had an inquiry, a Sanhedrin, or something of some sort to bring to bear what this gentleman had done. So this is what's going on at the moment. I'm trying to find the info actually because I've got it somewhere.
Well, let me say that corruption is not unknown. Right here in the United Kingdom, we had some difficulties around the availability of PPE, around who got the contracts to supply the PPE, and it put our erstwhile Minister of Health himself in very deep water because there seemed to be quite a lot of cronyism involved in the allocation of these contracts in double sharp time, and the contracts were reputed to have gone mostly to the friends of the insiders who were calling the shots and making the decisions. So the problem with corruption isn't entirely made in Africa. It seems to be the situation where society is on its knees and begging for this medication makes it the perfect petri dish for culturing corruption. So that happens. But what is interesting to me is that I have read the story that Candy is talking about. It's all over the media. It's being given complete exposure. Now, I'm just thinking that here in the United Kingdom, people of African origin don't seem to have a voice or an opinion in the way that people in Africa are just, they're saying what they like. In fact, some of the comments they've made are sailing pretty close to the wind, I've found. I mean, the point is they're free to speak as they more or less would like to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that they're doing that. I think my favorite one in all those that you mentioned with regards to what happened here with our former Minister of Health, I think my favorite one was the app that costs 37 billion.
That's incredible.
And then it still isn't working very well. But I mean, it's unheard of, if you ask me. I don't recall in all the years of my, being a British resident or citizen, whatever you want to call it, I don't recall ever seeing anything on this scale before. But it is what it is, and it's happening, and he seems to be, and nobody seems to, what I've be caring so much. But the whole coronavirus vaccine thing seems to have become a money-making scheme.
Oh, absolutely.
That really, when you consider that it's
with no
about
consequences, because nobody's gone to jail for anything, for any misdemeanor or
nobody has. Even though the courts here in the UK have actually found the minister or the government guilty of failing to permit, an open participation, as it were, and bidding for these contracts. They've been found guilty, but nothing has happened. But people of African origin here in the United Kingdom, as we've said already, not that they don't have, things to say, a lot of them, some that I've, had conversations with. And as Candy says, on the Clubhouse app, there are a lot of conversations going on about whether or not people should or should not take these vaccines. And people are expressing themselves. They're expressing their concerns. They're expressing their...
Sure. You see, not to belittle anybody and to give due credit, where it's credit where it's due. There's Chris Preddy, OBE, is a tireless voice. He broadcasts maybe 4 or 5 times a week on his channel, and he's got quite a big audience. And he's talking about all matters COVID. And he doesn't pull his punches. In fact, I'm surprised that he's allowed to do what he does, because other people have been pulled off for far less. But that, again, may be because the authorities don't believe that Black voices or PAO voices particularly matter that much. But whatever the case, long may he continue, and I think the man is a complete inspiration. Now, in the last few minutes that we've literally got about 10 more minutes, if that. I want to ask you to how we can sharpen PAO voices, how we can give them a bit more edge, a bit more zip, a bit more of an opportunity. Now, I go on LBC, and I publish on Facebook. Recently, I've started doing a lot of YouTube videos. So whoever's watching, I don't mind giving myself a quick plug and saying, please find me on YouTube and subscribe, share.
But you should be plugging yourself.
Comment.
What do you mean you don't mind giving yourself a quick plug? You should be screaming.
Oh, you're so kind.
Let me scream with you. Please
well,
go and find
you said it right there.
YouTube.
You said it right there on cue. I didn't want to sound like I was saying it myself. You know how it is.
No, it's
but the point is that how do we give ourselves a sharper voice? Candy, over to you.
How do we give ourselves a sharper voice? I mean, people should really get tuned in to these things that are going on. People should start calling
Things
in.
like they get tuned into what things? Like what? You mean the
Into,
clubhouse conversation?
for example, your show, my show, Priscilla's show.
Yeah.
People should find where the Black voice is, and people should listen to the Black voice. People should argue with the Black voice. People
Yes,
should
yes.
debate with the Black. Just give
Yes,
your view,
yes.
and let's see whether there's somebody out there who,
Yes.
there's nothing wrong. You're not wrong. Your view is important, and it could help somebody in all things, not just the virus. Now, there's so many other insidious things attached to this vaccine and to this virus. Now, if nobody lives in their own bubble. We're all attached to each other, and especially Black people. I mean, I keep forgetting to say PAO.
No,
Well,
please. I mean, feel free. It's just my nomenclature. I decline to
know.
use.
No, it's perfect. It's just that
Yeah.
because it's yours, I forget to use it sometimes. But the point is that people need to become aware of each other. We've all become a kind of an island thing, and but people don't realize though that it's connections. You could hear something that may resonate with you. You could hear something which could be a warning to you. You could hear something that could help your child in school. You could hear, and all of these things. That is why radios were built or started. That is why even our drumming in Africa, we had the drums to send messages, etc. We have to keep in tune. We have to put our ear to the ground. We have to listen, and we have to share.
Priscilla.
Yes.
I'd like to hear something to inspire people to kind of raise their voices and become heard throughout all of this. What's your contribution to this?
Well, I think for one thing, for one of the key things that we need to recognize is that our voices are important. Your opinions are valid. And so if that means putting your opinions out, whether that's on Facebook or it's on Twitter or it's on Instagram or you're in Clubhouse, put it out there. As Candy says, it's helping somebody. And the other thing that we need to do is where all too often we are busy looking at, we like to give all the credit to the BBC and the ITV and all of that. We champion all the Sky and but we're not ready to champion ourselves. So we're not ready to, support what Tet is doing, what Candy's doing, what I'm doing. We're not freely ready to do that. We're quick to dismiss. So I think we need to stop that and begin to learn, because that's the only way we're going to create our own authenticity, is when we come together and we also place value on what we have. But it is important, if you have a view, if you have an opinion, put it out there. We're learning every day. My goodness, I have learned so much in this time period with regards to, the vaccine. I've learned so much, my goodness. Sometimes when I look at some of the information, some of the things that are out there, it's unbelievable, but I think we also have to recognize, if you ask me, I think that when it comes to, I know people are worried about misinformation, and what is misinformation? Because we're constantly, every day, we're clamping. You hear government, they're clamping down on it. The social media platforms are saying they're shutting down on misinformation. But for me, so far, having listened and watched throughout this whole year and some, the people I think misinform more than anybody are the government themselves. Because today, we will start off by saying pregnant women should not take the vaccine. And then we roll it a few months down the line, pregnant women should take the vaccine. In between, we've got women that are saying, I took the vaccine and I lost my pregnancy. Nobody's attending to that. We've got government saying, oh, no. At the very beginning, they say, no, we're not going to discuss passports. It's not going to lead to that. Of course not. That's conspiracy theory. Today, we're now saying you can't go into pubs if you don't have a passport, or if you're not validating that you've taken the vaccine. At the very beginning, they say, no, it's your own free will. You decide whether or not you want to take it. Today, the campaign is so huge about people taking it. We're discussing, how we're going to forcefully make sure that people take it. We're talking about it having an effect and impact on people's employment, their daily livelihoods, just to do basic things now. In some countries, Israel, for instance, you cannot go to a concert if you cannot prove that you've taken the vaccine. So, where do we go? Where do we stand when the government are the ones that are doing this? Because if you ask me, having observed what was, from last year to now, a lot of what was said to be conspiracy theory last year are manifesting today. So who is the biggest misinformer, public misinformer then at the end of the day? And I think we all need to look at that, assess and process that information, assess and process all the information with regards to the vaccine, to the jab, I should say, and make an informed decision. We must not be afraid, whatever that decision is, because at the end of the day, it is our respective bodies. And for some, it doesn't have an impact, it's fine. But for others, we cannot deny that it's been fatal. And we should stop pretending about that. And I think people need to be able to speak up. If this is how they feel, if this is what they have observed, if this is what they've seen around them, it should be spoken.
Priscilla, thank you so much. That was so eloquent. You as well, Candy. I really, really appreciate these sentiments, and these are things which are very rarely spoken out in the public. I'm going to share this post out on YouTube, and I'm going to also share it, with your permission, on Instagram, so that people can get a look at the kind of conversations that we're having. This isn't to say that we have got it all 100%, 360 degrees correct, but this is to stimulate thought and to give people permission, because my outtake of what's happened in the last year and a half, I've grown 10 years in the last 1.5 years in terms of my perception, my awareness, my conceptualization, and my understanding of the very society in which I live. And it absolutely informs my sense of myself and what I should do. And a very, very important part of that is that when you know something, you cannot stay silent. It is when you're unsure of something that you are forced to stay mute. So on that thought, let me thank you, Candy, very, very much. Priscilla as well for joining us, and our guests whose conversation threads I've not been able to, I don't know whether it's snarl up on the tech, I've not been able to pick up, but I shall be answering those questions right after this. Thank you so much. And it's good night from me and ladies.
Good night. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Cheers all.
Good night. Good night. Good night, people. Good night, listeners.